All right, this is the second video on how to research a stock. So the last video, I pulled up Apple from the resources that I have on Canvas. So on Canvas, I pulled up Yahoo Finance. I also recommend that you have this key terms pulled up. It's on the first thing under the SMG resources. So I am going through the research terms. So far, I pretty much I didn't get through a whole lot in the last video, but I did spend a lot of time talking about the graph. So I did talk about the ticker symbol, previous close, 52-week range, and now I'm going back to Apple, and I'm going to be talking about the volume and some of the other key statistics. So the last video I talked about the range, volume, and you'll notice that I have um, the Apple's information has changed since the last video. You'll notice that the market is actually closed. I was recording this during the last video during the day. The market is actually closed, and Apple was up, ended up $1.76 today. So just thought you'd like to point that out. Volume and average volume, these two kind of go together. These are the ones that you want to look at kind of together. Volume is how many shares of Apple was actually traded today. So how many little pieces of Apple ownership were traded today. So 50,221,965 shares were actually traded today. Now, what does that tell you? Well, that tells you that it was very actively traded today. But the average volume over the last 3 months tells you on average over the last 3 months on each day how many shares were traded. So obviously you can tell on average there were 59 million, over 59 million shares that were traded. So this was slightly less than on average over the last 3 months. It gives you an idea of how actively traded the stock is. I would say that if you are looking at a stock that has anything less than 1 million shares traded, I would seriously consider it, because if it's not being traded a whole lot, it's probably going to not have a whole lot of movement in their stock price. But it is something to think about. But it gives you an idea. I purposely picked Apple. Obviously, Apple is a company that you know very well, but it's also a company that is very highly traded, and so it has a lot of shares. So when you go and pull out some of the other stocks, you may notice a difference in the volume. Some of the other things that I wanted to point out down here, market cap. Market cap is going to give you an idea as far as the size of the company. To figure out market cap, they actually take the number of shares outstanding, which is also telling you right here, 5.7, that's a B for a billion. 5.7 billion shares, meaning that there are 5.7 tiny little pieces of the big apple pie, no pun intended, times however many, however much the price is. So the current price, the closing price of Apple was 115.21. So 5.7 billion times 115.21 gives you $657.01 billion. What is this? Why are we telling you this? Okay, so this is important to know as far as how big the company is. Okay, I give you this to tell you how valuable Apple is, and you can kind of compare it to some of the other companies out there. Size of company, it just gives you an idea of, is this a big bad company that you're talking about? Is this a tiny little company? But it gives you an idea. Earnings date, this is just telling you when they're actually going to release their earnings. So the company has to actually release data and information about how much money they actually made in the last quarter. The year is divided into 4 quarters, and so they will release that to you. PE ratio, this is price to earnings ratio. Price to earnings ratio, what this means is it's comparing the current price of Apple, which is, remember, 115.21, to the earnings per share. And the earnings per share, I don't see it listed on here right now. The earnings per share is telling you how much Apple made per share. So they take the total amount of profit that Apple made in the last quarter, and they'll divide it out among the number of shares they actually have. So what the PE ratio is actually telling you is it's comparing, okay, how much did you spend on it compared to how much the company is actually earning. So the good thing about the PE ratio is it kind of gives you a picture of what you're paying for. I once heard the analogy of thinking of like the PE ratio is giving you an idea of is this a cheap stock or is this an expensive stock? So the average PE for the S&P 500 right now is 19. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. The average PE is 19. So what that tells you is that anything lower than 19 means that this stock is kind of on the sale rack. So think about it like a department store, okay? If it's lower than 19, it's telling you that this is on the sale rack. If it's above 19, it's telling you that this is full price, front of the store, you're paying, above what they're actually earning, okay? So now this by itself doesn't tell you, okay, yes, I should buy it, no, I shouldn't, but it is giving you a picture of, okay, what's going on here. So for example, let's deal with sale rack. This is obviously Apple is less than 19. It's on the sale rack, okay? Is it on the sale rack for a reason? I'll give you an analogy. Let's go back to that closing sale rack. Have you ever looked at the clearance rack at a department store? Okay. If you flip through some of the clothes in there, some of the clothes in there are terrible, awful. They're horrible sizes. They're awful prints. And you look at it and you say, there's a reason why it's on the clearance rack. It's disgusting, right? Same thing for stocks. There may be a reason why it's on the clearance rack. However, just like on the clearance rack, sometimes you can find gems. Sometimes you can find that beautiful shirt, right? It's the perfect size, it's the perfect color, the perfect style. It fits you wonderfully, and it's half off. And you're like, oh, I have to have this one, right? Same thing with stocks, okay? This is telling you Apple is on the sale rack. Now you have to look at all the other big picture things to be able to determine, is this a good buy, okay? But it is giving you a little bit of a picture saying it's a little bit on sale because it's a little bit less than 19. If it's over 19, okay, it's telling you you're paying a lot for this company. Now, does that mean that it's going to be overpriced and that you're paying too much for it? Not necessarily. Okay, sometimes when you pay full price for a particular piece of clothing, for example, okay, you're paying full price because you're guaranteeing that you're getting the right style, the right size, the right color, right? Whereas if you wait for it to go on sale, it may not fit and may not look right. Okay, same thing with stocks. You're paying for something that you're paying more for it than what they're actually bringing in and earning. Well, maybe you're a forward thinker and maybe you're paying for a stock that it will make money for you. Okay, so it is something to consider. It is something to think about as far as whether or not that something is going to impact you. Some of the other things on here about forward PE, profit margin, enterprise value, price sales, those things I wouldn't really worry about because those are going to be more impactful if you're talking about long-term investments. So I would kind of skip over those. The other one in here that I would take a look at is this dividend yield. Okay, dividend and yield is really important, and it will be in fact impactful for our game. So for example, dividend is the first number and yield is the number in the parentheses. Dividend is going to be how much the company shares of their profits. So after they go and actually sell a bunch of their product and they pay for all the stuff they have to pay for, how much do they have left over? Okay, the company may choose, they don't have to, but they may choose to share some of their profits with you as a stockholder, and that's called a dividend. So Apple, for example, chooses to share $2.08 per share. $2.08 per share. So that means that if I have 100 shares, okay, I will get $208. That's on top of whatever the stock price increases over time. So like for example, that's on top of $1.76 that it increased by from Friday to the end of Monday. Okay, so that $2.08, that can be helpful. Kind of think of it as an extra sugar coating on top. It's great to have. It's not necessary, but it's nice to have. Okay. The only thing that I will tell you is like long term, if you're talking about stocks, the nice thing about dividends is it's also telling you that they definitely made money. Sometimes companies can lie. They're supposed to tell the federal government and their stockholders what's going on with their company. If you know anything about stocks, you may have heard of a little company called Enron. Enron's a company that told the world and that they were making money, that they had tons of money, and that they were, had tons of profit. Guess what? They lied. They end up declaring bankruptcy. They had no money. They were cooking the books. But here's the thing, they never ever paid a dividend. The thing about dividends is that they have to show me the money. So they actually have to put the money where their mouth is. So they said they have profits, share it with us. Show us. Okay? They have to actually pay it out. So it shows you that. Now the yield, the nice thing about the yield is it gives you a percentage. This is telling you how much of that purchase price that I paid, so that how much of that 115.21, how much of that that I paid am I going to get back in dividends? So I'm going to get back 1.83% in dividends alone. So I already made 1.83% from this company if I just collect the dividends alone. So that's another thing to take a look at. And again, that's important to know as far as in the stock market game. Yes, you will have a time where dividends will be released. If your companies have a dividend, you will get paid that dividend. So they will credit that to your account. So keep in mind, dividends do get paid 4 times a year after each quarter. And like I said, the company decides whether or not they're going to actually release that. A bunch of other stuff on here. Shares outstanding, I already talked about. Shares short. There's a bunch of other stuff that is in here that you don't really need to know for the game. Insider ownership, this is how much of the company is actually owned by employees. Institutional ownership, how much of it is owned by mutual fund companies. So that's kind of important to know. A couple other things on Yahoo Finance I would encourage you to take a look at. Look at news. So if you're looking at the top, it's kind of in the middle. News. This will tell you some news items about Apple specifically. And they will also kind of put in there any of their competitors. So you'll notice that it has Microsoft information in here as well. I would encourage you to take a look at this because it gives you an idea of what's going on in their company. It'll give you kind of a general idea. Key statistics we already talked about. Financials, if you really want to look at that, that'll give you some information about their income statement, how much money they actually made, operating expenses, yada, yada, yada. A lot of it's kind of boring, to be honest. Options, skip over. Holders, if you're really interested, you can take a look at who actually owns Apple stock. It says direct holders, and it tells you as of what date were they the holders of this company. The number one holder of this individual holder of this company is Timothy Cook. Anybody know Timothy Cook? He is actually the CEO of Apple, so you would hope that he owns the most shares. Historical data, that would be if you want to look up specific dates for Apple and what the price of Apple is. So you can put in the dates and look at that. I already showed you the chart, so you can look on there as well. Analysts, this will be kind of cool. This gives you information as far as what their earnings are, what their revenue is, how much they get from just money, earnings history. I would look at this though, recommendation rating on the right. This is kind of cool because this is giving you an idea of what the analysts are recommending. So what they think right now is they think that Apple is a good buy. It's almost to a strong buy. And it kind of gives you an idea of over the last 3 months what most analysts have recommended for Apple. So that kind of gives you an idea of that. And then lastly, the company profiles. The company profile will give you information about where it's located, about Apple, what they actually make if you don't know. Sometimes you'll look at companies that you don't know, and any recent filings with the federal government. So that gives you an idea of a little bit about Apple and how to actually research Apple.